Bideford for the October Plans Committee meeting. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we cannot be on YouTube this morning, but the meeting is still being recorded internally. We are now, are we? Apologies, we are now on YouTube, so welcome to anyone listening on YouTube. There is no planned fire drill for this morning, so should the alarm go off, please leave the building the way that you came up and do not use the lift. Before we start, I'd like to ask the committee members to introduce themselves by stating their names and the ward they represent, and likewise can the officers introduce themselves. So I can start on my left.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Hames. I represent Appledore. I represent Appledore Ward.
Morning, my name is Peter Christie. I represent Bideford North.
Good morning, my name is Kit Heppel and I represent Milton and Tamarside Ward.
Good morning, I'm Doug Smith. I represent Great Forest.
Good morning, my name is Chris Wheatley. I represent Sheppey and Langtree Ward.
Good morning, my name is Phil Pennington and I represent Monkley and Putford.
There it is now. Good morning, I'm Jane Whittaker and I represent Northam and Orchard Hill. Thank you.
Good morning, Chris Leather. I represent Northam and Orchard Hill.
Good morning, I'm Rosemary Lonk and I represent Two Rivers and Three Moors. So starting on the end there for the officers.
Good morning, my name's Sandra and I'm the committee clerk.
Good morning, I'm Stacey Dorian, I'm Head of Legal and Governance.
Good morning, I'm Helen Smith, the Planning Manager.
Good morning, my name is Peter Stapley, I'm Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the agenda, item number 1, apologies.
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 2, to receive the minutes of the meeting held the 7th of September. Thank you.
Just ask that, I think we've agreed, Sandra, already, that I did send apologies, and I was substituted by Doug Bushby.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pennington. The minutes have been amended to reflect.
And I think the same applies to Councillor Whittaker as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a proposer. Could we have a seconder? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christie. Councillor Hames. Councillor Heppel.
4.
Councillor Leather.
4.
Councillor Locke.
4.
Councillor Pennington.
Abstain.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Wheatley.
4.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest.
Could I just ask, on page 9 of the agenda, I did raise about publicising the cost decision. Can I ask what happened to that?
It's not been determined yet. So the way it works is the planning inspectorate directs that the council sends their costs of the appeal across, which has been done, and it's then awaiting. The inspector's decision indicates it's to be agreed with the appellant. So I don't have a confirmed.
Well, it wasn't the sum of money involved. It was a principle that we're getting more and more appeals, just to show that it isn't just a free pass every time. And this person is going to have to pay for what was basically a hopeless appeal.
Yes.
But we've had another one, I noticed, on our agenda today. So I think I would like it publicised, just to let people know.
Absolutely, and I would certainly agree with that. I think there would be merit in doing that once the figure is confirmed and it's agreed with the appellant. Then we would certainly look to publicise that. I think that's a good idea.
All right, moving on, item number 3, then, declarations of interest. Members with interest to declare should refer to the agenda item and describe the nature of their interest when the item is being considered. Elected members of Devon County Council and town and parish councils who have considered a planning application by virtue of their membership of that council hold a personal interest and are deemed to have considered the application separately. and the express views of that council do not bind the members concerned to consider the application of fresh, which may include further information. Item number 4, agreements between parts 1 and 2. We have no part 2. Item number 5, urgent matters. I have none. I don't know whether the planning manager or the solicitor have any. No? Okay. Item number 6, public participation. The order of speaking is a member of the town or parish council, 2 members of the public against, 2 members of the public in support, and all of the above have 3 minutes each. And finally, the ward member may speak, and they are not limited to 3 minutes. I will read out the names of those who have registered to speak when we come to each application. So item number 7, going on to the planning applications. First application is 1/0308 Surf Bay Holiday Park, and it's on pages 11 to 24 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? No? So I now ask the officer to give the presentation. Yeah.
Jewel Hatted, I'm a member of Northern's Planning Committee as well.
Thank you.
Jewel Hatted as member of both councils.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Peter Stapley. I was case officer for this application, which is 1/0308/2023/FUL. As Chair said, it's demolition of the existing Surf Bay Holiday Park reception building and a proposed mixed-use 2-storey building and holiday unit. It was a resubmission of a previous application. Just to provide a quick verbal update, I believe, because the agenda did not have a map on the front, that was a formatting error. A map is included in this presentation and it was shown during site visits, so just to make that clear. The application was called in to be heard at Plans Committee by Councillor Hodson for the following reasons: the scale of the building visible from the northern boroughs, a triple SI, contrary to local plan policy DMO8, a 3-storey structure will dominate the street scene. The roof terrace, a recreational space, would be likely to have detrimental effect on the privacy and the right for quiet enjoyment of the nearby residences and gardens. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here we have a location plan. You can see there the caravan park is the wider site, and the application site is just highlighted in the middle there with the existing building. Next slide, please. And we just have an aerial image here. So we've got the highway along the south boundary there, and you can see the caravans and the neighbouring residential properties to the south, and you also have some to the west there. Just to provide a policy context, so it is outside the development boundary, but considered to be within the development coast. There's the local plan policies, and it's North 5 there for the tourist area. This is the front elevation in context with the highway you can see at the bottom of the image, the existing reception building set back from the south boundary of the site. This is the highway access viewing east, and the highway access viewing to the west. Because it was called in for the impact of the street scene, so this just to show the current street scene context. You can see there the tree on the south boundary, this building behind that tree, and you can see the manager's accommodation just to the left of that tree there, where the site entrance is. And again, just the street context from the west side. So you see the manager's accommodation, which is currently used as tourism accommodation, and the site access there. So the site would be just behind that manager's accommodation there. This is the front elevation, just a closer view without the context. And this is a view from the front elevation, just viewing south. You can see the residential properties on the other side of the highway there. And here's the rear elevation. And a view from the rear elevation showing the caravan park, and beyond that is the triple SI and the northern boroughs. This is the side elevation, so the west elevation, just shown in context there with the manager's accommodation on the right, the highway access for the park, and then the residential dwellings beyond that. And again, just another front elevation in context with that managed accommodation. And here we have landscape views. So this was taken from the northern boroughs, looking back onto the site. So the site is in the middle of the developed area there. This is the existing site plan. Here's the proposed site plan for the application. The existing elevations just shown there, a single-storey building. And here's the proposed elevations. Existing floor plan. And the proposed floor plan, so 2-storey with a roof terrace. And here's
anyone here at the back? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm stood in a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And here's the proposed street scene, showing the context of the managed accommodation and then the neighbouring workshop building. The material considerations in this case are the principle of development, impact on character and appearance, the landscape impact, impact on residential amenities, access, parking and highway safety, foul and surface water drainage, impact on wildlife and ecology, and the conclusion. The reasons outlined in my report, I'm recommending approval with the following conditions as shown at the back of my report.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. We now go on to the public speakers list. The first person is Claire Stacey, who's speaking against the application. If you'd like to come down the front and put your microphone on. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Good morning. We own the property directly opposite the holiday park and will be significantly impacted by this development. We are speaking against the proposed development on the following grounds. The sheer scale and mass of the development will have a hugely detrimental impact on the surrounding properties and the landscape and on Golf Links Road as a whole, creating a corridor. The visual impact is overbearing in design and appearance, and I call into question the need for another 5-bedroom holiday property, as currently there are 12 5-bedroom holiday properties in Westwood Ho alone and 33 within a 5-mile radius, and that is with just one local company. This is a 3-storey development. Regardless of the wording stating it's 2-storey with a roof terrace, it's still 3 stories high. We have significant concerns about the noise and environmental impact upon all the neighbours from the roof terrace. The properties adjacent to this development are narrow, Eastbourne Terrace, and this design's wide elevation faces the road. The impact on the landscape will be significant. If the design was rotated perhaps 90 degrees, this would have more of a visually in-keeping appearance to the adjacent street and have less of an impact on Golf Links Road. Also, after reading the planning officer's report, we also call into question the timings given for any building works to start from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This is a residential and holiday area and would impact upon the general well-being of all in the vicinity, including the holiday park itself. Whilst we appreciate buildings need renewing, the impact of the scale and design of this development will affect many and Westwood Ho in a seriously detrimental way. So we request that this current design is rejected. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Katie Carr.
Good morning. I strongly object to the proposed development as it's overbearing. This is a 3-storey property, recognised as such by the council's previous refusal. The roof terrace can and will serve as a 3rd floor. The proposal is unlike any other in the area, therefore no comparison can be made so far as noise, light pollution or the impact on residents and the local community. It will also create a corridor effect into the village along Golf Links Road. The proposed development will impact the local area with viewing balconies and roof terrace, which will be an invasion of public privacy and have an overbearing effect on the northern boroughs and the public use of footpaths. I would like to challenge the representation in the committee report in relation to nearby views. The report states that the views from northern boroughs are already dominated by the caravan park. I would argue that a single-storey caravan would not block out a 3-storey, 1,232 metres squared, 10-berth property. It is also stated in the report that the building will sit well below the visible slope behind it. I challenge this, as it will dominate all existing views from opposite residential bungalows. I would like to ask why Northern Council now recommend the application after multiple refusals. The proposed development will encroach on my own, my young family's and surrounding neighbours' personal amenities. It will reduce mine and my family's personal enjoyment within our private dwelling and will be an invasion of privacy with the displeasure of being overlooked. I have the right to privacy in my own home and garden and believe in particular that the balconies, which will be capable of holding 10 people, will look directly into my private garden and living space, and it is in direct contradiction to the NDTLP stance on intrusion. I would like to ask how you would feel if this building was at the end of your garden. Thank you.
And our final speaker, Rebecca Fernley, speaking in support.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I'm here to speak in support of the application. So there's been a lot of reference to the planning history, obviously. So we had approval for very similar schemes in 2014, then was followed up in 2016 by a sort of renewal of that application. Those were both dealt with by delegated decisions and approvals. And then it kind of fell off radar over the sort of pandemic and things, and the client didn't take the application forward. So then in 2022, we brought a new application which looked at changing the accommodation. So previously we had approval for two bedroom units, but what became clear was, and what Mrs Stacey referred to, there are 12 5-bedroom properties in Westwood Ho, and this was probably with the same letting company, so I've got similar statistics, but there's also 52 2-bedrooms. Travel Chapter UK have provided some supporting evidence on this and said that in 2023 there were 13,410 searches for properties that sleep 10 people, of which there are only 12 in Westwood Ho, versus 10,000 for properties that sleep 4 people, which are the 2-bedroom properties, obviously, and there are 52 of those in Westwood Ho. So it does show that there is a situation where the demand is outstripping what we currently have supplied. So my client, who runs Surf Bay, wanted to address that and address that only supply within his business, because obviously he has quite a lot of caravans, but he wanted to look at an upgrade to the building and also providing a different type of accommodation and offering. I understand then that there was a refusal in 2022 because we'd added a roof terrace, but we'd also added a stair tower to sort of access the roof terrace, and I think that was felt to be unacceptable. So we have amended the design and gone back through and discussed this with planning officers to come to something that everyone felt was more acceptable. It is a 2-storey building, and the roof terrace is within the roof of what you'd say is a traditional pitched roof building. So it is no higher than a traditional 2-storey building with a sort of 40-degree pitch roof. So it's not out of context in those terms, really. It also does sit amongst quite there's a big landscape sort of backdrop, and also you've got East Bournemouth Terrace that sets the kind of scale for the area as well, which is significantly larger than what we're proposing. I want to address the overlooking as well, because I do understand that there are always concerns about this, but my understanding is where you've got a large public highway between the dwellings, and we're looking at sort of at front gardens and fronted properties, that there can't really be an overlooking concern. I understand that there's a loss of view, but as we all know, view isn't controlled by planning. The last thing I want to reflect on quickly is that Councillor Hodson called it in May for a number of reasons, but since then the amended design has been to Northam Town Council, and Councillor Hodson actually seconded the approval, which was in August 23. So we hope that members can follow the officer recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time.
Right, we have no further public speakers, so I'll open up the matter for discussion. Who'd like to kick off?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was surprised to see this called in to Plans Committee, to be honest, probably for the reason that has just been mentioned. But as to the overlooking issues, this building is set back, actually well set back from the road. It's a replacement. Could you put the picture up again of it that faces the road? The actual, what would face the road? Yeah. No, yeah, the elevations, yeah. That's the one.
There's a context one, the photo, but yeah, that's the elevation.
Yeah. The top one is what would face the road. There is that balcony there. The roof terrace is in behind at the top. And you can see with the bottom foot picture, that's facing onto the site to the caravans. So that's the terrace that you can see on the top level within the roof. There's a manager's building next door, which is virtually the same height that this would be. And then, of course, Eastbourne Terrace, which is alongside this site. So I honestly do not believe there's any issue of overlooking from this site. The bungalows across the road are set well back from that road, from Golf Links Road. So, you know, I don't think there's any problem overlooking from it. And the building needs upgrading. It'll look a lot better than the flat roof thing that's there presently. So I'm happy to move approval of this, Chair.
Yeah, I very much agree with the previous comments from Councillor Leather. It is a balance between the amenity of neighbouring properties, but in the context of where it is, and Eastbourne Terrace, which was mentioned previously, it's a balance between the two, and I hear both sides, but I don't see enough to refuse it at the present moment. So I echo what our previous speaker has said. I hear what the amenity is, but I think on balance, unless I hear differently, I'll come to the decision that I will approve, and I will second Councillor Leather's proposal.
Yes, Councillor Hames.
Yeah, perhaps I should have asked this at the site visit, but I see nothing about flooding in the officer's report, and there's nothing from the Environment Agency. I seem to recall when the building next to the site, the larger building, was approved, there was an escape room inside the building, reflecting the situation of possible flooding. So can I ask through you, Chair, what the situation is there?
So I think with the manager's recommendation,
can I ask what, is it on flood 1 or 2? I can't remember what the designation is.
While the officer is checking that piece of information, I've just got one query. Condition 6, I was pleased to see about the operational hours, but I can remember in another application with the roof terrace that we also conditioned that no furniture be allowed on the balcony. Is that something we could do for this application?
I believe we have used a condition to that effect where there may have been a sort of heritage link, like in the conservation area, or where you wouldn't want a roof terrace to be filled with paraphernalia that could harm the visual amenity of the area. Is this the front roof terrace, the roof terrace,
Yeah.
or the... It would be open to you to suggest that, but we would need to understand why. There's no amenity concerns raised around the siting of that roof terrace. It is at the rear of the building. There isn't that same visual amenity, as I understand it, from the roof terrace. It's not as if it's sort of prominent in the street scene. So we would really need to understand why you would want to not have furniture on there. There's not a cited amenity concern. And obviously the roof terrace is quite a key part of the overall building. So, but it's open to members to consider that.
Thank you.
Flood zone 1, so that's over the next 100 years or what?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the roof terrace and the furniture you were referring to was Alan Smith's application, which was fairly contentious. What I wanted to raise, I couldn't quite understand when I looked at this, it was highlighted by Councillor Leather, why Councillor Hodgson had called it in and then voted for it at the Northern Town Council. I mean, she could have withdrawn the call in. I don't know why she didn't. I mean, there was, as you say, Councillor Leather, there was quite a time between them. Why she didn't call it in, I don't know. But I was intrigued because I went back to the original application that Mrs. Fern...
that was considered to be unacceptable, as that would create an overbearing and dominance of the design, and especially along that highway of Goldsmiths Road, given the height and the scale on the end location and elevation. Coming along Goldsmiths Road, that would be one of the main features that you would see, and that would create an overbearing and dominance feature there. Discussions were had with the architect at the time, but it wasn't removed, so it was refused on that basis.
Thank you for that, except the tower isn't referred to in our last decision at all. It actually refers to the whole development as being out of scale, density, massing, height, layout, appearance. I mean, it isn't just one bit. It's the whole thing. And I still can't get my head around why it was turned down a year ago, and it's come back with very little change, and now you're saying go ahead with it. It does seem slightly odd.
I think we've got to remember that every application on its own merits. I think that's the important thing to remember.
Thank you, Chairman. Change is always very difficult to accept, isn't it? So I've got a huge amount of sympathy for the neighbours, but I actually think on reflection that in actual fact, eventually things won't be half as bad as they imagined it will be. And I don't think the distance between the building and their homes is something that we can take account of, unfortunately. So I shall be voting support.
Hours of work at 7 o'clock start. I mean, if it is approved, I would suggest that was moved to a later time. I think it's not acceptable to start work so early as that. This came up yesterday on another matter, another planning application we talked about. And, I think it's too early, really.
So what alternative would you suggest?
Well, it's normally 7:30, isn't it? But I'd say 8, really, especially in the winter.
So in this case, the Environmental Protection Officer, who considers amenity from construction processes, recommended those times. It does vary site to site, Councillor Hames, whether it's 7 a.m, 7:30, but as a rule, a 7 a.m. start is considered acceptable and quite common on construction sites now. It is, of course, open to members to change that time if you feel that in this particular case it would warrant it. But I would emphasise that the professional statutory consultee has indicated 7 a.m. would be acceptable.
Yeah, this is a densely populated area, isn't it? So it would impinge on neighbours quite strongly, really.
Right, if there's no further comments. Yes, Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to come back on that, actually. I agree with my councillor friend, but in actual fact, if you change the conditions to make it more acceptable and more amenable to local neighbours, I suspect strongly that you will find that they will not work.
Right, so no further comments. It has been proposed by Councillor Leather, seconded by Councillor Pennington, that the application is approved. Do you want to take up Councillor Hames's point and change the construction hours? No? Councillor Pennington? So it is how it stands then. So it has been proposed by Councillor Leather, seconded by Councillor Pennington, that the application is approved.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christie. Councillor Hames. Councillor Heppel.
4.
Councillor Leather. 4. Councillor Locke. 4. Councillor Pennington.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Wheatley.
4.
Councillor Whittaker. 4. That's 7, 4 and 2 against. Chair, approval.
Thank you very much. So moving on to application number 2 on the agenda, 1/0791, Yeovil Barn to Holiday Let, and it is on pages 25 to 34 of your agenda. I'll just wait for members of the public to leave. Are there any declarations of interest? No? I'll now ask the officer to give the presentation then. Thank you, Helen.
Yes, so the case officer is actually on leave, so I'm going to present the planning application. There is a connected listed building application, which is item 7C. The listed building application relates to exactly the same proposal as the planning application. The Conservation Officer, Sarah Chappell, dealt with the listed building application. So what we're going to do is run through a single presentation. There will be a combined effort on that, but for members to be mindful that it is exactly the same proposal. The listed building application relates to exactly the same detail. However, separate consideration will be needed to be given to both applications. So I will run through the material planning considerations for the planning application. Sarah will then run through the listed building application consideration. So I hope that's clear, but just to say that both applications are relevant to the presentation you're about to see. Also, just to clarify that this application is before you for consideration due to the applicant being related to a staff member, so it's not actually been called in by a ward member or a member of Plans Committee. So this shows sort of an aerial shot and the submitted location plan. As you can see, the site is located within a rural location. It's within the Yeovil Valley. It's accessed via a rural lane, so direct access where you can see the red line joining the highway is onto a very sort of narrow rural lane. That rural lane loops around, and there are actually 2 points of connection to the C461 road below, which is the main road that heads sort of towards Bradworthy. The site is in an elevated position, as you will have seen from some of the photos that were shared on the site visit. It does sit up above the valley with the highway set below. It is actually well screened as well, as also you would have seen. There is some significant mature trees around, and also well-established hedgerows down below. Members who were on the planning committee during the last council will probably recall doing an in-person site visit here to look at a conversion of another building to a dwelling, which is up in the main cluster of the buildings. So I'll just move on to the block plan now, and I'll actually hand across to Sarah, who will just talk through the scheme, the drawings, and some photos.
Hello. This is quite an unusual scheme, not in in that the building actually still survives and still the form of this settlement still retains these traditional buildings. Yeovale House is a gentleman's residence set on the side of the valley, and as a gentleman's residence it would have required certain buildings to support it, including a carriage house, greenhouses. The carriage house has been converted. You heard my colleagues say that was a site visit in person. This proposal is to convert some ancillary buildings which are attached to the bottom of a very nice walled garden, which would have been necessary for the gentleman to feed himself. You can see that it's an L shape of buildings. It's described as a linea, which is the east-west building, and it has a lean-to section which comes back, which has a sort of very attractive corrugated roof at the moment. The access is really on foot. Can't get from the plan, obviously, is the topography of the site, which is why it was quite important that you looked at the photographs on the virtual site visit. The buildings are sited at the bottom of the walled garden. They're nestled right into the valley, and the trackway to the right-hand side is actually the traditional way of accessing with shall we say, the tradesmen's entrances. So the proposal now is to convert what remains of the linea and the lean-to a holiday letting unit, which will retain the building as part of the wider complex and walled garden. If I can have another slide. So this is the plans. So the existing plans, you can see it's got a nice pantile roof, which is typical of an outbuilding and dates the building quite nicely because pantiles are no longer made. That will be retained, and you can see that it's actually walled in on the other side by the garden wall, and there's an archway through from the trackway. So this part of the site is completely contained as it would have been as part of the functional part of the estate. Have another slide, please. So here are the proposed plans. You can see the pantile roof remains. The open part of the linea is glazed, and you would only get glimpses of that through from inside the walled garden itself. And the trackway to the side, you can see there's a tiny glimpse of the glazing. It's all enclosed. The lean-to section of the roof is going to be replaced with a similar or modern metal roof. If I can have another slide. I think we've got some photographs. So the access is across the front of the house, and the visitors will leave their car there, and then they will go on foot down through the walled garden, and you can see the walled garden quite nicely there, and you can only just about see the roof of the building hidden behind the vegetation. I'd like to carry on. And then you can see the archway from the track and the internal view of the walled garden, currently laid to grass. And this is the internal courtyard where all the changes will happen. You can see the wriggly tin roof, which will become a metal roof. You can see the internal structure. And I think we're sort of there with, unless anyone's got any...
If I run through,
yeah,
if there's any questions after. So, presentation is... so I'll just run through the material considerations for the planning application. So this is item 7B. So in terms of the principle of development, as set out in the officer's report, the proposal does involve reuse and conversion of an existing building. Therefore, policies DM18 and DM27 are relevant, and it is considered to comply with both of those. There is a condition recommended to restrict the use to holiday use only. In terms of visual impact and landscape character, the site is very visually contained due to the landscape, mature trees, and also the walled garden itself does actually screen the building as it is attached to it on one end. It is recommended that conditions be included to remove permitted development rights, and also that material samples are received and approved prior to construction. Heritage assets There is an accompanying listed building application. The Conservation Officer has looked at this proposal in detail and provided comments, raising no objection. It is considered to be acceptable under MPPF paragraphs 197 to 202 and also the Listed Building Conservation Area Planning Act. No significant harm is noted, and also it is considered to be an optimum use of a building that is currently disused. There are no amenity concerns. The building is set some distance from any other unconnected property. Drainage is acceptable. Highways and parking, members may recall from the previous application, those that were involved in the consideration of that, the access onto the sea road. At the time of considering the previous application, a condition was included to secure highway improvements and visibility improvements, which have been undertaken, and that condition has been fully discharged. Those highway improvements, which were shown, photos of which were shown at the site visit, do provide adequate visibility to oncoming traffic on that side of the road. However, due to land ownership issues, no highway improvements can or have been made in the other direction, which would be on the sort of not the immediate carriageway. So that there is a slight conflict in terms of highway policies. However, with the previous application, it was considered that the improvements that were secured were a betterment, and it also has to be weighed against the benefit of securing that listed building's optimum use. And then finally, ecology. The application is accompanied by a BAT survey, that a licence is required and a condition is included to ensure that happens. That is a separate process in any event, and also a need for mitigation for swallows was identified as well, and there is a condition recommending that. So subject to those mitigation measures, there's no objection in terms of ecology. So given all of that, the recommendation is one of approval.
Yes, Councillor Christie.
Well, I went to the original site visit to this place. It's real hot.
I've got to go to public speaking.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise that. Sorry.
One resident speaker, Mr. Chris Evans, speaking in support. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Hi there, I was the agent on the application. My name is Chris Evans and I'm Director of Coast Architects. That was a really comprehensive presentation, so I don't need to dwell on any of the points that you've already raised. But I guess it's good to cover why this project came about in the first place. And the barn is capable of conversion, as illustrated by the structural report, but it is showing signs of decay and it needs work. And at the moment, it is just a tool store at the bottom of a walled garden, a very beautiful walled garden. So to justify the expense on repairing the building and making it safe and secure for another 50 to 100 years, we recommended a change of use. And I think responding to DM18 and the expansion of the tourism use that's already on site, I think it is a really unique offering to the area and will greatly improve their business as well with that set up by the 2 sides of the barn. And again, looking at the legibility of the history and the narrative of the site, the intervention has been purposefully quite modern as well. So a lot of glass, and then using timber and concrete and metal. Still materials that are common in agricultural aesthetic, but using those to contrast against that, the historic rough-faced stone and cob. That's all I've really got to add. It was a very good presentation by Sarah and Helen. So thank you.
Right, Councillor Christie, off you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I did go to the site visit last time, and it was a real hodgepodge of buildings there, and I was very envious of their walled garden, I have to say. But the thing that did let it down was these buildings they're talking about, actually, which weren't, they were out of keeping with the rest of it. So I've got no problem with proposing. I'll propose that we accept this. If it sits well with the Conservation Officer, then that is an added bonus for me.
Yes, Councillor Whittaker.
I'd like to second that proposal. In actual fact, I had one concern, and that was the highways issues, because I actually know that road. Relations of mine used to go and stay there many years ago, and that road can take some fairly fast traffic on occasions. It's a shame that nothing can be done, but all in all, I think I would be quite happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, yes, I can't see anything wrong with the actual approach to the development. There is have a concern about the effect on bats. I noticed that the lesser horseshoe is one of the bats which roosts there. Of course, they're pretty scarce in this country. I just asked you, Chair, what's the situation about can't go ahead? Is that the case? And do they, in your experience, recommend or look to an alternative roosting site? What's the process, please?
Usually planning permission is needed before that licence can be applied for. The ecology report is quite clear that those discussions have already taken place. It's a very detailed ecology report that highlights the need. It can be a range of mitigation measures that can be pursued. It depends on whether a different sort of bat house or habitat is required, or if it is just mitigation whilst works are taking place, and that would all be dealt with through the licence. And if the licence isn't given, then no, they would be it would essentially be a criminal offence to carry out the works without that. So that is needed, albeit it is important to note it is a separate process to planning, but one that would impact on those works.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, can I just ask?
Yes, come back. Yeah.
Just notice that I can't see the Conservation Officer's report in the documents. Can I ask that this has happened when we look at planning applications at Northern, but we haven't had a report. Is there any reason why it doesn't go into the document?
The Conservation Officer response is on page 27.
No, I meant in the document.
So uploaded on, yeah, upload. So
Oh, right.
It's been an omission to be uploaded. It should be uploaded.
Yeah, it should normally. That should be on the system for people to view.
I apologise. It's probably because I didn't upload.
Right, have we got any further yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points of information, if I may. You're talking about the roof material being a metal. I mean, a lot of the other roofs there are pan-tiled, and I know they're unavailable. But they must be available somewhere. But what sort of material? I'm sure it's very much in keeping, but it's just a point of information, if I could. And the other thing is we're specifying holiday use only. Could you specify exactly what that entails? Thank you.
So condition, let me just check. So condition 5 of the report of the recommendation says used for holiday accommodation and no other purpose. It is a sort of matter of fact and degree at what point something is holiday accommodation or not. We don't tend to put a sort of specified time scale. We could sometimes there are conditions we use which expand slightly, specifying not as a second home. We could add something additional to that effect, but essentially it shouldn't be a permanent residence. Essentially would be that test.
Is that the kind of application? Sometimes you have to keep the place vacant for 1 month in the year, or it's that kind of thing we're talking about,
historically we used to put historically there were conditions that would require maybe only 9 or 11 months of the year to be occupied. We don't tend to do that now. That gives us enough mechanism to enforce that, but the distinction is it not being a permanent residence.
Thank you.
Right, any other further comments? If not...
Yeah, the other question, Chair, sorry, was about the roof material. Thank you.
I'm wondering whether it might be worth going back to the elevation plan. You can just see it's proposed to be like a rolled steel sheet roof that's coming down. Right. So it will just, you can't use wriggly tin. The other option would have been plastic coated box profile. So I think this will weather in much more appropriately, and it actually faces a hedge line, so it's going to be very unusual someone gets that view.
Yep.
The view really is from the other side of the valley, which is quite a way.
Yep.
That was in, I bought these because I've got them. This was in 2000, and Councillor Hames will be pleased to see that it's rather different now with the landscape management, so that the building's virtually invisible in the landscape.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just add to that, Chair, there is a condition requiring a sample of that roofing material as well prior to it being constructed. So, you know, there is an opportunity then for the Conservation Officer to have a look and for us to be sure that it's appropriate.
Just briefly, I do know South Your House. I used to know the person who owned it a good few years ago. It's a lovely house. I should think the loft there, the roof space, is full of bats, I should think, down there. So I won't worry about the bats on this one.
Right, so at the moment then we're dealing with 0791. So it's been proposed by Councillor Christie, seconded by Councillor Whittaker, that the application is approved.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christie. Councillor Hames. Councillor Heppel. Councillor Leather. Councillor Locke.
4.
Councillor Pennington.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Wheatley. 4. Councillor Whittaker. 4. Unanimous to approve, Chair.
Thank you. And then we move on to the listed building consent 0792. So we would need a proposer and seconder for this one.
Sarah Chapel can just quickly run. The considerations are just slightly different.
Right.
So if she could do that.
Yeah.
Just quickly, obviously we've considered this as a curtilage structure, so it is subsidiary to the main house, which is the listed structure, and this is listed by virtue of being part of the paraphernalia of the holding. In this case, we have to consider whether it harms the significance of the building, and in this case I came to the conclusion that the proposal does not harm the significance nor the setting of the host dwelling, and therefore we consider that it's acceptable under paragraph 16 of the Planning, Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act and the guidance set out in paragraph 202 of the NPPF.
Anyone got any comments to make on this application then? So it has been, yes.
I would just like to say it seems to be very much in keeping with what we would expect, and I would propose that we accept this.
It's already been proposed,
it has,
by Councillor
Christie
and seconded by Councillor Heppel. Yeah. So could we go to the vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Christie. Councillor Hames.
4.
Councillor Heppel.
4.
Councillor Leather. 4. Councillor Locke. 4. Councillor Pennington.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Wheatley.
4.
And Councillor Whittaker. 4. Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to application number 1/0507, the demolition of a storage shed and the erection of one dwelling at the Molesworth Arms, Pyeworthy. It is on pages 40 to 49 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Yes, Councillor Heppel.
So I have to declare an interest because it is me and my wife who are the applicants, so I will leave the room.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is proposed for the demolition of an existing storage shed and the erection of one dwelling at Molesworth Arms. That's at Pyeworthy, a couple of miles west of Holsworthy. This is a satellite image. You can see Molesworth Arms identified on this Google map. It's centrally located within the settlement. This is the location plan. You see the red line plan that surrounds the existing storage building. This is the existing building. It's regarded as a non-designated heritage asset. It's a rendered cob storage building associated with historically with the Molesworth Arms. It has a natural slate roof and cart doors which front on to the public highway. This is the proposed block plan. These are the proposed elevations, very similar to the existing building. The proposal is actually to demolish the existing building, which is in a poor state of repair. We'll see some photos later that show that there have been previously catastrophic cob collapse. So a very similar building. The existing building is actually in two sections with a lower rear section. The proposal is to, in effect, demolish this rear section and create an offset single-storey rear extension. The main building would be 2 stories. It would have a mezzanine first floor, which would be the bedroom, so it's a 1-bedroom dwelling. Downstairs is open plan living area with kitchen, dining area, and there would be an amenity area which would be on the western side. That would be about 3 by 3 metres. That would be the area which is currently the smaller single-storey section at the rear of the property. To enable natural light, there would be 3 roof lights, and there would be a louvered opening above the cart doors, which would be retained, and that would be for a bathroom. This is a cross section. There were a few concerns about potential impact, especially on the rear neighbour, which is the Thatcher's cottage. At the moment, there's an existing boundary wall, vegetation screening the 2 elements, the 2 properties, but there is at first floor a habitable bedroom window which does face onto the site, and this cross section just demonstrates that the single-storey element would have no adverse impact on this window. So onto the photos. Molesworth Arms. The storage shed is the building in white, the rendered painted white with the cart doors. To the rear you can see the neighbouring property. This is the southern elevation. This is where there was the cob collapse. Buildings held up with acro props, and this section was weatherboarded. This is the nearest residential property, Thatcher's cottage. This is looking back from the access into Thatcher's cottage back to the central area in the village and to the front of Molesworth Arms. This photo is looking southwards from the parking area in front of Molesworth Arms. This is the boundary to St Swithin's Church, which is a grade 2-star listed church. These are images from within what historically was the pub garden. It's not actually used as a pub garden anymore. It's used as sort of amenity area for the letting rooms, which the Molesworth Arms let as holiday accommodation. Photos within the building. You see the acro props holding the building up. There's sort of wooden structure that's partly holding up the ceiling as well. This is a photo of the structure. I believe the applicant, Councillor Heppel, bought the property in 2015, and this was when it was in a poor state of repair. And this is an image of. So the tractor didn't cause this. The tractor is removing. It's removing the cob. Just in case you were wondering. So the main material considerations are the principle of development. In terms of the principle, it's a Schedule B settlement. So policy STO 7. It's acceptable. It's acceptable area to have a new dwelling. In terms of impact on heritage assets, there are 2 parts to this. The first one in terms of the storage building, because we regard it to be a non-designated heritage asset. We would in the first instance normally look to retain the building and see if we can convert it, but as you've seen, there are significant issues with the building. And in this case, it would be unreasonable to suggest that they try and retain it or rebuild it. So in that regard, we consider the replacement of the building to be acceptable. And I suppose the secondary factor is its appearance, because the applicant had actually done pre-application consultation directly with Historic England previously with a different scheme, which I think was perhaps very contemporary and a much larger building. The comments from Historic England were, you really got to reflect what's currently there, and one of the reasons for that is the association with the public house, the surrounding buildings, but also because of the church. Although the church, as you can see from the photo, is well screened, it's not all of the year, but this site does form part of the setting of the church. So we consider the replacement of the current building and the proposed design is appropriate and acceptable in this case. In terms of residential amenity, as you saw in the photos, close relationship with the rear neighbour. I think the cross-section identifies that actually there wouldn't be an adverse impact on the living conditions of this property. There were concerns raised by the environmental protection team, and because the Moles Where the Arms has a licence which allows it to be open until 1 o'clock. So there's potential impact there on future residents. So there is a condition recommended, accepted by the applicant, which would ensure that the consumption of food, drink, and music would be limited till, well, it would not be permitted between the hours of 11 at night and 7 in the morning. In terms of highways and parking, there is a parking area that's proposed to the south of the storage shed. It doesn't quite provide two full parking spaces. It's about 1.5 metres shy of that. In terms of the Highway Authority's comments, they issued their standing advice, and typically we would like to see 2 parking spaces in this location, but it falls just short of that. However, there is an existing parking area, as you can see from the photos, to the east of the site. So in this case, we don't consider that to be an overriding factor in this application. Thank you, Chair.
Right, there's no registered speakers, so we'll go straight to the discussion. Who'd like to kick off? Don't all speak at once. Yes, Councillor Leather.
Yeah, I just was thinking that's an unusual condition on condition 5, that the public house, including its external area for the sale and consumption of food and drink, regulated entertainment shall cease between the hours of 2300 and 7 in the morning.
Only the other way round, doesn't it?
That seems to me to be a very strange planning condition. The dwelling that's immediately behind this proposed rebuilding of this shed, they're already there with the pub in operation as is. I can't think why there's a need to put that condition in, really. Just surprised me that it doesn't seem like a planning condition, that. I'm happy to move the application. I'm happy to approve it, Chair, but I just think that's a very strange condition, that is. There's other properties close by as well, you know. It's never been an issue till this.
I think that's because the issue has arisen now, because I don't know the history about Thatcher's Cottage, but I believe I've seen some history that it was originally converted possibly in the last 20 years, but certainly now, today, when our environmental protection team are looking at new residential developments, they look at the existing baseline impact on them. They can't control what's gone on before, but they identified we have a license there which is not potentially could impact on these neighbours, because the new property, because the separation distance is not very great at all. So I mean, I have seen it used quite a lot, and also, as the applicant has pointed out, they don't actually open past 10 anyway. Pubs aren't used in the same way as they have perhaps done historically, so perhaps the issue isn't as great as it was, but there is potential, because we don't know in the future if someone else is going to take it on, and actually they're very much into, music and being open late into the evening. So this is just a control, and I should say that the applicant has agreed to it, and they consider it to be
But this condition applies to the pub itself, not to the red line application site.
Yeah, that's
right. You know what I mean? You're imposing or trying to impose a condition on the pub.
Yeah, that is the reasonable thing to do, because it's under the same ownership. Because we could have said to the applicant, actually, maybe we could redraw the red line, but we know they own it. So we know they have control over it, and it is very common for appeal inspectors to say, we know it's under their ownership, we know they have control, so therefore it meets the tests for planning condition. So I'm quite comfortable that it meets those tests.
Could I just come back on that? Because I'm sure you said that the pub can stay open to 1 a.m. at the current time. Is that what you said?
It can, yeah.
Yeah, so in fact, they're losing 2 hours trading then. Yeah.
But they don't currently use it past 10 o'clock anyway. So in effect, they might gain an hour. But yeah, it's not used in that way.
Right.
Just, yes, maybe a small point I raised at the site meeting. Throughout the report, it's referred to as Molesworthy. I hope that doesn't make any planning permission invalid. Perhaps we should get the name right when we issue the planning, if we approve this planning application. As I understand it, it's Molesworth and not Molesworthy.
The site address is Molesworth Arms Shed.
Yeah, we can ensure, Councillor Hames, that obviously the description of development is key there, and if it is referenced in a condition, then we'll take that as that can be amended post-committee, should committee approve.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just following on from what I agree with Councillor Leather, I don't think there should be any condition imposed.
So are you seconding the proposal?
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you want to take that condition off?
I think we should remove condition 5. It just, I don't like things for the sake of putting things in, bureaucracy all the time. I don't like it. There's no need for it. And I really don't think there's a right to impose that.
So, can we do that?
It's open to the committee to do that. And you've stated clear reasons as to why.
Yeah. So, are you happy? Yes, Councillor Christie.
I used to sit on the licensing committee, and I thought it would be something for the licensing committee, not for planning.
Because, I mean, obviously this is going to be an open market house, so it doesn't, it won't be in the same ownership, will it?
So the licensing team do form part of environmental protection team, and it was that the officer that deals with the licensing and the planning liaison officer that both came back to me and said, we've identified that we've got reasons for concern here because the licence does allow it open till 1, and we would not support a new dwelling that close to the building where potentially you could have very loud music and people drinking and eating till 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's where the concern comes from, and it is a legitimate one.
To them, yes, it might be but to us it's just strange, and I think it's a lot better with it taken out. And if the pub doesn't operate now normally past about 10 o'clock, fine. But if on occasion there's a wedding party wanted in the village there, and they wanted to be there till 12 with food and drink and possibly music, why shouldn't they have? As you say, Chair, why restrict the potential of trading hours? There's no need to.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I think it should go back to licensing anyway, and in the unlikely event that the Molesworth Arms is sold at some stage, right, then things could change dramatically, couldn't they? I mean, they could have, you know, all sorts of late night entertainment in the middle of the countryside. It has been known in the past.
Well, what are you saying,
I'm
Councillor
not
Whittaker?
saying anything. I'm just recalling a memory. I didn't invite you, what a shame.
Right, getting back to business.
Thank you, Chairman.
So where are we going with this condition then? Your proposal is approval to remove condition 5. And you're happy with that, Councillor Whittaker? Right, so it has been proposed by Councillor Leather, seconded by Councillor Whitley, that the application is approved subject to condition 5 being withdrawn.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's open to the committee to do that. As the case officer said, it was a request from the Environmental Protection Team, so I just want to emphasise that you're aware of that.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christie. Councillor Hames. Councillor Heppel. Oh, sorry.
Against.
Councillor Leather. Councillor Locke. Councillor Pennington.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Wheatley.
4.
Councillor Whittaker. 4. Unanimous, Chair.
So someone can ask Councillor Heppel to return.
Oh, what an idiot.
Chris has gone to get him. Sorry? Is that what? You'll be pleased to hear, Councillor Heppel. We had an in-depth discussion. Yes, Councillor Whittaker.
Chairman, I wonder if I could just say something a minute, because I was a little terse about development, was I not? Or conditions, rather, this, earlier. And I really want to talk about conditions at some stage with planning members, planning colleagues. And I wonder when it could be done. We have a major problem down in Limers Lane with Amberley. And the reason that I was very terse, I know, about changing the hours from early in the morning, 7 to 8, is because it's not working down in Limers Lane at all. Now, I don't know what we do about this, I don't know. But I sometimes feel that some conditions, not all, but some conditions just don't ever seem to be resolved.
Perhaps we could arrange some sort of meeting, particularly to discuss conditions, you know, separate to committee and have a separate meeting.
I would be very appreciative. Yeah, thank you.
We could certainly do that, and whether we tag it on to virtual site visits if we have a not many on a particular agenda. We are finalising sort of a programme of training to interact with you as Plans Committee, so we can certainly incorporate on that as well. So we'll look at when would be best to do that. I think just to say on conditions, they do play a really important part in decision making, through mitigation, through ensuring quality of development, and particularly construction hour conditions are really important. They are routinely recommended by the Environmental Protection Team. We can only put conditions on if they meet the tests, and one of those is that it must be enforceable. Now, with construction activities, sometimes there's differing times. Sometimes it's construction hours, distinct from delivery hours. The particular case that you referred to, Councillor Whittaker, has, we are currently in negotiation with the developer, and that's always the starting point where there is a breach of any condition or any breach of planning. It's not a quick process, but the quickest route to a resolution is usually through negotiation. We are separately doing and updating enforcement training for members and for parish councils, so that will be rolled out as well. And I believe our Democratic Services team were going to make a previous enforcement presentation available on the internet for you, but we will be delivering an updated one just so that you can understand that process and what we do at our end, but we can bring conditions into that as well.
Right, going back to your agenda, item number 8. Yes, Councillor Pennington.
We voted on removing condition 5, but we never actually voted positively to approve the application. Have we missed something? We did. Yeah. We have done that. That's fine. That's good. Yep.
Item number 8, the appeal decisions, pages 50 to 61. Any comments? Item number 9, cost on appeals, pages 62 to 64. I thought the Torridge one was quite hard to follow because I think the council put in an application for costs, and because he didn't deem it necessary that we went outside.
It's unusual for costs to be awarded on either side. I think on that particular case, as is set out in the decision, the council felt it was reasonable to put a cost application in. However, the inspector didn't consider there had been unreasonable behaviour by the applicant, hence it was refused.
Item number 10, delegated AGMB applications, there are none. And item number 11, the planning decisions, starting on page 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71,